A World of Wrong Authors note. This story is not suited for kids and contains references to blood, gore, and cannibalism. It is based on roleplay in DayZ and is considered fan fiction. Chapter 1. Mikal slowly makes his way over the castle courtyard as the sun sets. The slaves have done a good job with the courtyard, Mikal thinks to himself as he looks over at the 3 bodies hanging by their necks at the newly made execution area. Too bad some of them did not obey the laws set by Emperor Phoenix, he thinks, and can't help but smirk at the sight. Mikhail! The female voice is sharp as a knife, and there is no mistaking who it is. Yes, my lady Emperor, Mikhail answers, bowing his head in respect. She walks up to him, followed by Hutch and Faye. Why is it that some brat that I did not even know the name of comes to me with information that I expected from you a few days ago? My apologies, my Emperor, but I have had many duties this past couple of days, Mikhail says with respect. But in his mind, he thinks, do you think I can make an execution area in 5 minutes with 3 slaves? I want you to head out tomorrow and find out everything you can about this Vlad person and his merry gang of do-gooders. Do not come back without some useful information. You know what happens to people I do not need anymore, right? As you command, my Empress, Mikhail answers as he looks over at the 3 bodies and thinks, that could just as easily be me. Mikhail, you seem also to be pretty resourceful when it comes to torturing tools. Get me some new ones on your travels. Dungeon Master Faye tells Mikhail and gives him that evil grin as he looks up at her. I will come up with something, Dungeon Master. By the time they finish their conversation, it is already dark, and as Mikhail heads over to his tent, he looks over at another tent that belongs to Lee. He starts to think of a plan to get rid of this scout wannabe. A few hours later, when only the guards are awake, he silently makes his way over to Lee's tent and slowly and quietly makes his way over to her, making sure not to cast a shadow over her. He drops down with both knees on her arms and places a hand over her mouth, pulling her head back, and draws his knife and places it over her exposed throat. You know, as a scout, you need to always sleep with one eye open, he whispers to her, and sucks up every bit of fear he can see in her eyes before cutting her throat open so hard he can feel his knife hit her neck bone. He keeps his hand over her mouth until the blood stops pumping out of her throat. By the time the sun rises, he has disposed of the body and starts to walk over the bridge to the mainland to do the task assigned to him. Chapter 2. After walking for the better part of the day, Mikhail stops and places his backpack on the ground before preparing a small fire. He picks up a slab of meat wrapped in paper and unwraps it. Well, let us see how female meat tastes like Lee. He chuckles slightly at his own dark humor as he starts to eat what used to be part of Lee's leg, a few kilometers north. Daddy! The young boy, no more than 6, comes running toward Vlad and jumps up in Vlad's arms. Wow, you're getting heavy, son, Vlad says as he smiles at the young boy. Mother wants to talk to you. I think it's serious. Well, we better go and see what she wants then. The 2 of them walk over to a rundown clinic. As the 2 of them walk into one of the rooms, they see her changing some bandages on a man. Hun, you wanted to talk to me? Yes, let me finish this, and we can go into the next room. As the 2 of them walk into the room across the narrow corridor, she rips her gloves off and looks at Vlad with concern. I don't know what else I can do for him. I can heal his wounds, but the psychological impact of torture, he needs a psychologist. Vlad looks at her with concern. Maybe I can ask Ivan. The vultures do owe us a favor or two. He looks over at the man who used to joke and laugh and was, in general, a happy person, sitting there with empty eyes, looking at nothing. He walks over to him and places his hands on each side of his face. I will get you back, my friend, Vlad says as he looks into the empty eyes of his friend and brother-at-arms. Mikhail lies down at the edge of the tree line, scans the northern highway, and spots 6 people walking towards Svetlogorsk. As they get closer, Mikhail hides his rifle under him and slides further down in the tall grass of the ditch. As they pass, Mikhail can clearly hear what appears to be the group's leader mentioning a group called the Vultures and asking on the radio if Dr. Shock is still with them. Mikhail keeps following them to Svetlogorsk, and in town he gives them some distance to avoid detection. As he watches the group enter a large church, he slowly makes his way into a house on the opposite side of the road to keep an eye on them, and starts to eat some of the grilled fingers he collected from Lee. Chapter 3, Dungeon Master! Hutch's booming voice echoes through the castle halls. Fast-paced footsteps can be heard as Faye makes her way to Hutch. Yes, my lord, she says as she kneels in front of him. I have trust issues with Mikhail's abilities. Yes, my lord, so do I. I want you to send that girl out. What was her name? Lee, my lord. Yes, yes, send her out and report back to me what she finds out about Mikhail. My lord, I think she already anticipated your request. Her tent was empty this morning. Oh, I like her already. Make sure she will get a room within the castle walls when she returns. Yes, my lord, she will be most honored by your generosity. Make it so, he finishes as he walks away. Faye bows her head as he passes her and walks away to her dungeons and home. Mikhail hears the large church doors open and at least 10 people leave. The group he followed seemed to have increased with one admission, a man who, in Mikhail's eyes, seemed weak and afraid of his own shadow. As he looks at them, the only girl in the group says something and receives an answer before she walks away from the group. Mikhail sees his chance and quickly makes his way out of the house. He follows her as she walks away between two houses. Mikhail slowly and quietly walks around and slowly moves up behind her. She offers no resistance as she sits with her pants down at her ankles, and Mikhail places his hand over her mouth. Not a word if you want to stay alive, Mikhail says in a low tone. Pull up your pants, he commands after giving her a quick glance. After she pulled up her pants, he started to move away toward Berezino and his way home. As they leave Svetlogorsk, he ties her hands up behind her back with steel wire and ties a rope to prevent her from running away. Where are you taking me? She asks as the worried voices of her friends die out. I'm taking you to the one and true emperor of South Zagoria, Mikhail answers. What does she want with me? I got a task to bring you to her. That's all I need to know, Mikhail lies, as this is just a bonus price for his emperor and her pet Faye to play with. The two of them walk in silence for a few kilometers before she breaks the silence again. So you're just a soldier doing what you're told then, she says with confidence in her voice that surprises Mikhail. I do what it takes to survive, he answers, but for some reason it seems not to roll off his lips as quickly as it used to. He starts to think of what he has done in the name of survival, but his thoughts get interrupted by his prisoner. Well, you won't survive this unless you let me go. Her voice carries even more confidence. Mikhail stops in his tracks, and she almost falls backward as the rope reaches its length. He walks up behind her and spins her around. I think you need to shut up right now, he says with a slightly louder voice as he grabs her by the chin, forcing her to look at him. Or what? You're going to kill your emperor's price? She spits back at him. She is gone, sir. We have searched the entirety of Svetlogorsk, and she is not here. Vlad looks around, and the worry in his eyes can be clearly seen. Whoever did take her must have had eyes on us. But for how long, I wonder? Well, we need to get Dr. Shock back to the camp, but after that, I want my wife found. Vlad, sir, we all know where she is taken. She is one person. I know, but despite the fact that she is my wife, she is also our only doctor. As the two of them walk over the bridge to the Skolisty Isle and make their way up to the castle, Gustav, one of the few trusted people, comes up to Mikhail. Doberdan, Master Scout. Doberdan. Now that's a sight to see. Wait, I believe that's Vlad's wench you have there. Indeed it is, Mikhail says, not knowing who he has captured. I'm sure the Empress will be pleased with your find. I hope so. This one is feisty, Mikhail says with a smile, tugging slightly at the rope. Anyways, I'm here because of a dissidence. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Gustav asks, bowing his head in respect. You may, but I have been away for a few days, so I'm not sure how many answers I can give. Well, that's the thing. It's about Lee. She disappeared when you left. I see. Well, I did see her in her tent the evening before I did leave. I did, however, not spot her when I left in the morning for obvious reasons. I'm sorry for asking, but what are the obvious reasons? Well, my tent is over there, and I was heading to the bridge. I see. I'm sorry for not remembering that detail, he says as he writes in an old book. Well, thank you for your time, Master Scout. Keep me informed in this matter. She is under my training. Of course, he says as he starts to walk toward the bridge. As Mikhail arrives at the castle gates, he is greeted by the guards. Emperor Phoenix is expecting you, Master Scout. Mikhail nodded sternly as he walked past them and into the Emperor's Great Hall. As usual, Emperor Phoenix is flanked by Lord Hutch. "Welcome home, Mikhail. I see your trip brought fruit." "Yes, my Empress. I made the call that capturing her was worth more to us than finding their home, that we should have no problem getting from her anyways." "That's a good call, and I'm sure our dungeon master will be most happy." "I hope Gustav's questions did not bother you too much," Hutch says, as his gaze turns from Phoenix to Mikhail. "No, my lord, it was a most prudent action since she apparently has disappeared." A third voice can be heard behind Mikhail. "Ah, I see you brought me a present," Dungeon Master Faye said as she walked up next to Mikhail. Her clothing has changed a bit, and Mikhail can't help but stare at her well-toned body, hiding behind a thin shirt that reveals almost more than it covers, and some tight pants that show every curve on her lower body. "Not only one present," Mikhail says with a smile, as he presents a small blowtorch. "Oh, you're spoiling me," she says and gives him a quick kiss as she takes the rope from his hand. "Dungeon Master, make sure she stays alive. She might have some important information for us," Phoenix says. "Don't worry, I will play nice with my new toy." "Good, take all the time you need." "I will. We will have such a great time," as she says, waving the torch in front of her. As the two of them walk down the stairs to the underground part of the castle, Katie started to speak. "So, what are you planning to do to me?" "Well, that depends on what you're telling me. Tell me lies, and you will feel pain. Tell me the truth, and you will feel pleasure." The two of them walk into a large stone room. Faye fastens her on a large cross on the wall, and when she is secure, she undresses her. "Vlad has good taste," she says as she cups her right breast and pulls the nipple until she gasps in pain. "So let's get started. Where is Vlad located?" she asks as she walks over to a table and uncovers an assortment of surgical instruments, among other cruder instruments. She picks up a pair of pliers and looks at them before turning around. There are a lot of spots on the bodies that can both feel wonderful satisfaction and an equal amount of pain. Now said this, I also want to inform you that the last person down here went completely crazy and could not differentiate between pain and pleasure. To him, everything was pain. She says as she walks up to Katie and lets the cold steel move over her body before she opens the pliers and clamps it over her nipple. The pain is so sudden and horrible that she can't help but scream at the top of her lungs. As the pain subsides, she starts to think about the poor man at her clinic and wonders if this is where he was. "I know how to be nice, you know. All you have to do is to tell me what I want to know," she says as she gently brushes her warm hand over her breast and nipple. "So this will be much more pleasant if you just tell me what I need to know, and maybe you will keep your sanity." As she talked, she let her hands explore Katie's body and ended by cupping her hand over her private area. "You can do whatever you want with me. Torture me, rape me. I will reveal nothing," she says, and finishes by spitting Faye in her face. "As you wish. I will get my pleasure from Mikhail anyways," she says as she turns around and places the pliers on the table and picks up a scalpel. "So, let's keep going then," she says as she turns around. Chapter 4, Vlad looks at Dr. Shock as he tries to talk to Bori and starts to think, this is hopeless, and turns around and walks out of the small room. "Vlad, hold up," Dr. Shock calls out as he walks over to him. Just as he is about to talk to Vlad, a faint voice can be heard from the room. "Pain. Only pain." Both Vlad and Dr. Shock turn toward the voice in surprise. But by the time they see Bori, his eyes yet again are completely empty. "What's so painful?" Dr. Shock asks, but again receives no answer. As they walk away for a bit, Dr. Shock looks at Vlad in concern. "What happened to him?" "We do not know. He went out scavenging and returned like this after a few days," Vlad answered as he looked back at Bori through the window. "It is obvious that something traumatic has happened to him. I can help him, but how long it will take, or even if it's possible to get him back to the person he was, that I do not know." "I know. Just do your best. That's all I ask." Of course, Vlad walks over to Ivan and gathers his thoughts before starting to speak. "I have a job for you and your vultures, and this time I wish to come with you." Ivan looks at Vlad for a moment with both concern and a bit of surprise. "Valem told me what happened in Svetlogask, but sir, two things. Do you really wish to go with us to Skolisty Isle? And with all due respect, could you keep up with us? Vlad thinks for a moment, thinking that Ivan could be right. They do this all the time, and he could slow them down. I know how you feel, but the reason I wish to come with is so I can make a judgment on whether we can attack them and how. The entire camp stops in its tracks, and even Ivan is at a loss for words. I know how you all feel about this, but here are the facts. President Roland is not in this country at this time, and therefore half of the opposition we face is gone. We have a lot of good friends and allies, so this is the best opportunity we might ever get in a really long time. Vlad looks around, and among fear, he also sees hope and determination. We all know that one day we will stop hiding and do something about this situation we live in. We have trained for this purpose, and now the time has come, so I beg of you all, don't back down now and forsake all the work we have put into this. Mikhail wakes up and smiles down at Faye, snuggling up next to him in the small and cramped tent, just perfect for two people that don't mind sleeping almost on top of each other. Hey, sleepyhead, time to wake up, shaking her gently. Oh no, already? She says and slowly rolls over and lies on top of him. Just a bit longer, she mumbles. Why not? Mikhail thinks as he can feel the nice warmth from her body and wraps his arms around her. Down in the torture chamber, Katie has tried to get loose all night, but fatigue, the pain in her wrists, and the heat from the construction lamp placed just a few meters in front of her, preventing her from falling asleep, is making her sick. Come on, she mumbles to herself, gritting her teeth. Then with a snap, one of the leather straps snaps with a loud crack. She quickly untied her other hand and quietly jumped down from the cross, grabbed the hunting knife from Faye's table, and slowly made her way to the wall next to the exit, where she waited. I think we have given the people around here enough entertainment for now, Faye says as she rolls off Mikhail. There is no doubt people are slowing down as they pass Mikhail's tent, and some walk past more than they need. Well, maybe next time we can do this in the privacy of your chambers, Mikhail says with a smile. I'm already looking forward to it, she says before giving Mikhail another kiss and dresses herself. I'll see you tonight then, she says as she walks toward the castle. Katie raises her knife as she hears footsteps on the stairs and waits patiently as Faye walks in. She swiftly grabs her from behind and cuts her throat, making sure that as little blood as possible gets on her clothing. As most of the blood has left her body, she drags her away, carefully undresses her, and dresses herself in Faye's clothes. You really dress like a slut, she whispers at Faye's dead body. She quickly checked the 1911 handgun she grabbed from Faye, and soon noticed that it was fully loaded with 2 extra magazines and put them away. Well, better than nothing, she mumbled as she slowly made her way up the stairs. As Vlad, Ivan, and the rest of the vultures reach Tolga, Vlad has to admit that his stamina is not what it used to be and huffs and puffs as he starts to talk to Ivan. Holy shit, you were not kidding about high pace. You did well, my friend, Ivan says with a smile. Drink and eat now and let my scouts initiate the security check, Ivan continues. I will not oppose that. I do need to rest before I suffer a heart attack here, Vlad says as he sits down with a small backpack. As Katie finally reached the top of the stairs, she looked out the window and noticed that the sun had barely moved over the horizon. Early morning, that's good. Maybe not too many are awake yet. She quietly makes her way through the empty halls and notices a door not fully closed. As she walks in, she can see some strange vials and syringes she has not seen before and grabs one that only says B1 and is next to another similar vial that says A1. She walks toward another window facing east and looks out. The drop is less than 5 meters, but still way too high. I prefer breaking my leg in a more friendly area, she thinks to herself, but decides to try and scale the rough wall, hoping for a more suitable place for a drop-down. She carefully squeezes through the narrow window and easily finds footing on the protruding cobblestone rocks. As she rounds a corner, she almost laughs in delight as she can see some scaffolding on the wall leading down to the ground. She swiftly climbs down and makes her way to northeast and starts to swim over to the close-by aisle. Vlad picks up his radio as he hears the call from one of the scouts. Vlad here. I have eyes on your wife. She appears to be swimming to the Closeby northeast aisle from Scholasty, the scout announces. Holy shit! That's my wife for you. Vlad can't help but raise his voice in happiness. Keep an eye on her and give her any support you can. She may have vital information, and get her to here as soon as possible. Vlad continues as he calms down. Yes, sir, the scout calls out. As Katie finally reached the small aisle, she was already shaking in the cold. No reason to wait. I can't make a fire here, she thinks to herself and starts to swim toward the mainland. And as she makes her way up on the shore, she quickly makes her way over to the tree line, and without a word, a ghillie-suited man grabs her and pulls her down as he places his hand over her mouth. Vultures is the only word he says in a low tone, and she immediately relaxes as he covers them both, and only a few seconds after one of Empress Phoenix patrols passes them. The two of them let them move away for a bit before he slowly stood up and started to walk toward Tolga. Vlad comes running toward Katie and wraps his arms around her. I'm fine, she manages to say, still shaking from the cold. Come here, let's get you warmed up, Vlad says as he leads her into a house with a fire. Chapter 5. Mikhail runs through the castle and doesn't stop for anything until he reaches the end, where they put Faye. He looks at her for a long time and gently lets his fingers brush her face and looks at her neck, where they wrap some clean rags to cover up the cut that killed her. He looks up at Phoenix and Hutch, who stand on the other side of the bed. Go and avenge her, make them suffer for what they have done, Phoenix says, knowing she doesn't need to, nor would it matter if she forbade it. Without a word, Mikhail takes a slight bow and walks away. Do you think he will return? Hutch asks. He will, with more heads for me to place on this wall than you can count. Phoenix answers, remembering the last time Mikhail went on a rampage. You have known Mikhail longer than me. What kind of person is he? He is the most trusted man I have, even though you lack in trust him, Phoenix says and looks at Hutch with eyes that say, I know what you did. I'm also sure he would kill anyone for trying to take his place around here, including his apprentice if she was too early, all in the name of his and our group's survival. So drop the investigation. You will not find anything, and even if you did, I would not act on it. Yes, my Empress, Hutch answers and bows his head. As Mikhail reaches his tent, he removes his backpack and picks up another one stowed away in the back of the tent. As he opens it, revealing a gill suit, Olivia, one of his apprentices, comes up to him. Master Hunter, I would be honored if you let me aid in your crusade, she says as she bends a knee and looks down. Without a word, Mikhail changes into his gill suit and turns around. It honors me that you have taken our cause to heart in such a short time, but you are far from ready for what I'm about to head out on. You told me I have good eyes. If you wish, I could stay in the tree line and look after you. One do not have eyes in their necks. Mikhail remembers saying this to Olivia several months ago and can't help but smile at her boldness in quoting him. I will move fast, and stealth will be of utmost importance. Get your gill if you feel you're ready for this. And no fast kills unless it is needed. I will move out in 3. Said this, he picks up his large sniper rifle and an assortment of different .408 ammo. We should leave. We have been here for too long, Ivan whispers to Vlad. Vlad nodded, and the two of them slowly slid back out of the bushes. Once after, several other gill-clad men start to move and stand up when they are behind cover. I believe most of those guards on the walls can be eliminated if your snipers can fire all at the same time. If that's possible, a lot of our opposition can be neutralized, Vlad says as they walk back to Tolga. I agree, but we still don't know what's inside of those walls. I got reports of 500 men and women. Granted, most of them are slaves. Well, I do not wish to kill slaves unless it is avoidable. I'm sure the Empress knows your dilemma and will use them as a meat wall if we attack. Vlad sighs loudly. I'm sorry, Vlad, but if we are going to have even a remote chance to win this battle, we will need to forsake some of our pride. As they reach a house, Kenneth comes out. We got a map that we edited slightly with the information we got. The men walked in and looked over at the table where Katie made a few more marks on the map. Damn, this is good, he even says as he looks at what could be a strategic map according to his standards. So Mikhail brought me over the bridge right here. I thought he was going to blindfold me, but I guess he did not think about me escaping. Anyways, below the castle right here seems to be where most of their forces reside, and over here there seem to be a lot of their slaves. Vlad watches in silence as his wife points out the different areas. I also did see some of the slaves carrying water from here. So I believe there might be a source of fresh water here, she says as she points at another location on the map. That's a long shot. That is if they have a pump there. I would say about 2,000 meters, Ivan says, looking at the map with a bit of concern. You are right, there is a pump there and I ranged it to 2,100 meters, Kenneth confirms. Well, it is slightly larger than a human, so I might be able to take it out, Ivan says, but he doesn't sound too confident. Anyways, I'm sorry to say I did not see much of the castle itself. The throne room is here and some smaller rooms along this wall, and the dungeon, I believe, was far underground, Katie continues. Were there any windows in the throne room? Vlad asks. There might be, but if there is, then they were all covered by their banners. That reminds me, I found this vial in one of the rooms. I did not reflect on it, but it seems to be warm, she says as she shows the vial with the label B1 on it. Keep it safe for now. We have to find out what it is later on. For now, we got a battle to plan, Vlad announces. Mikhail and Olivia slowly make their way over the bridge as Olivia starts to speak. So, where are we starting? I'm sure she is heading straight back to Svetlogorsk, where I found her. I'm sure Vlad and her friends are hiding somewhere up there. Side this, he is starting to slow jog, but soon increases his pace as he notices Olivia is keeping up. Don't go slow because of me. You have trained me well, Olivia says as she follows Mikhail. Chapter 6. Mikhail stops in his tracks and seems to be thinking for a moment. They are not at their camp. They are on a rescue mission, he mumbled to himself, barely heard by Olivia. She looks at Mikhail in silence, and he looks around before turning north. Care to enlighten me, master? These are people that care about each other we are dealing with. They would search for their Barstino, especially if it's their leader's wife. Genius, master, why did I not think of that? You will, when you got as much experience as I do now, be silent. I believe they reside in this village. Vlad, the anarchy has agreed to help us and also the corporation, Ivan informs Vlad as he walks up to him. That's good news. When will they arrive? In a few hours. So that's where you're hiding, Mikhail whispers mostly to himself. So how do we do this? Olivia asks. I will walk in there and to disrupt their plans, and you will stay here and make sure you have a silencer on your rifle. Olivia looks surprised at Mikhail. Just look at all those men wearing gills. I will blend right in. As you wish, master. Mikhail moves back slightly before standing up and walking in. As he almost reaches the first house, someone calls out, Hey you, who are you? Mikhail keeps walking toward the house. Stop or I will shoot. Everyone stops what they are doing, and Mikhail can't help but move his hand to his sidearm. Olivia aims and takes a deep breath just as Mikhail has taught her, and lets her heart steady before squeezing the trigger, and her first shoot echoes through the camp, instantly dropping Mikhail to the ground. She drops the gun, stands up with her hands raised, and walks out of her cover. She looks at Mikhail as strong hands grab her, and the familiar sound of handcuffs is put on her wrists. A woman walks over to Mikhail, turns him around and gasps, It's Mikhail. She just shot Mikhail, the Empress, Master Hunter. Vlad walks up to Olivia and looks at her for a moment. Who are you? I'm Olivia Bjornstad, sister of Martin Bjornstad. Your sister of... Vlad looks around for a moment. Get those cuffs off her. Kenneth walks over and uncuffs Olivia. Vlad, Olivia, and Ivan walk into a house. Is Martin okay? Is the first words that come out of his mouth. He is fine. Thank you for asking, but let's get down to business. I need to get back to camp. I'm sorry, but I thought I only sent your brother. You did, but he is going nowhere without me, even though he is my big brother, she says with a grin. So, as you might have noticed, we are preparing for an attack. So what info can you give us? Well, the northeastern shore is mined all the way up to the castle. Now, the good news is they are too tightly placed. Blow one up, and most of them will go off too. Also, most of their slaves will fight for the Empress. They are not allowed guns, but there are a lot of other tools they can use. Vlad looks at Ivan for a moment. I guess we have to kill slaves after all then, Vlad says with a solemn voice. So, one more question. Any idea what this is? Vlad asks as he places the vial with the label B1 on the table. Olivia quickly grabbed the vial and swiftly placed it in a bucket of cool water. I can't believe that shit has not started to burn yet. that my friend is an experiment the Empress ordered, and it is really unstable and must be kept cool at all times. So what does it do besides burning? It burns so hot one's going it melts almost anything. A few tablespoons of that could burn a hole in the castle wall big enough for someone to crawl through. The entire content of that bottle could make a hole in the wall big enough for an army to pass through, once the stone cools. Interesting. What happens if it hits the water while burning? Hydroshock, big enough to take down a bridge. I like your plan, she says and smiles. The volume of the low talk outside the house increases as marching steps can be heard, and the cheers increases as anarchy and corporation men and women arrive at the camp. Vlad walks out, followed by Ivan, Olivia, Kenneth, and Katie. Vlad smiles broadly as he spots Dmitri and Peter. So I guess it is time for a revolution, Dmitri says with a big smile as he shakes Vlad's hand. Indeed, my friend, it's about time we remove the vermin from South Zagoria. After explaining the plan to the leaders and the troops, Peter starts to speak. Jaren here is an ex-Marine. I have no doubt he is your man when it comes to destroying that bridge. Jaren walks up and salutes. I cannot guarantee success considering this substance is experimental at best, but I will do my best. I got a feeling you will not like what I'm about to say, but this is how it works. It is self-igniting, but as long as you keep it submerged in water, it should stay cool enough not to ignite, and it's not instant. Now, when it burns, it will not stop and burn so hot it melts stone. So I suggest you start on the aisle side and work your way back. And once it starts to burn, you drop everything and swim as fast as you can back, because when it hits the water, it will create a large hydroshock. Jaren looks at Vlad as if he is asking himself, what the hell have you been smoking? Sounds easy enough, he finally says. Jaren slowly makes his way over the road toward the bridge in the pitch dark and picks up the 10 small capsules of B2 and places them in his vest and slowly starts to swim underwater, and from time to time sticks his head up for a breath of air. As he reaches the middle of the bridge, he can hear the guards talking. God, Mikhail scares the big Jesus out of me when he is in that mode. A hearty laugh can be heard from the other guard. What? You can't say those eyes don't scare you. Mikhail looks scary, yes, but he is the most loyal man I had the privilege to serve with. Really? He looks madder than anything else to me. Oh, trust me, he is the most loyal man you will find on this isle. As Jaren continues to swim, their voices fade and he finally gets to the first pillar. As he picks up the first bag, he almost drops it as he can feel it get warmer as soon as it is in the water. As he finally reaches the opposite shore, he turns around, almost expecting to see the fire. He quickly makes his way through the forest toward 3 abandoned buildings and hunkers down. As the sun rose, he almost believed the mixture given to him had failed. But no longer than a few seconds after the sun hit the bridge, he could hear on the radio, "Great job, the bridge is burning." Jaren leaves the house and makes his way toward the shore under the cover of some rocks. He can see his friends swimming to the northeastern isle just as the bridge collapses and a huge bloom of water vapor can be seen, and soon after a loud boom as the B2 mixture hits the water. Less than a second after, several gunshots can be heard. Several of the guards on the wall drop, and before the surviving ones can react, several more of them drop from sniper fire. What the hell was that? Empress Phoenix calls out. A servant comes running in. The bridge, it exploded. Benedict! Yes, my Empress, Benedict says as he beds on a knee. Get the slaves ready. We are under attack. Yes, my Empress, he says as a small smile finds its way to his stern face. Benedict quickly walks away. The Empress requires your service. Line up in front of the gate, as many of you as you can, and the rest of you come with me. Some of the slaves try to run away, but are quickly gunned down by Benedict and his men. Anyone else want to try their luck? He shouts, pointing his AK at them. As Jaren reaches the isle, he can see the first people reach the shore and he pulls out his M4, making sure no one comes around the castle. As soon as all of them hit the shore, they start to move around the castle on the northern side and can hear sporadic gunshots from the snipers on the mainland, enough to keep the Empress soldiers occupied and not noticing their approach. Vlad almost jumps out of his shirt as a guard falls from the wall right next to him. As they finally get around, the gunfire starts to pick up, and it doesn't take long before all of them lose count of how many they killed, slaves or soldiers alike. Vlad can't help but second-guess his decision to attack when he finally can see how many of the men he has known for such a long time lie bloodied and dead on the ground, and shouts in pain can be heard from both sides. Several combat medics do their best to keep the wounded alive, but in the end, too many died, he mumbles on himself. Don't let them die in vain, Peter says with a solemn voice, and grins in pain from the bullet wound in his shoulder as he draws his sidearm and moves it over to his other hand. There is only one direction to go. Let's finish this, he calls out as he gives Vladi a slight push. As they approach the huge castle gates, several slaves stand there, and behind them, slave master Benedict. Welcome, Vlad. I'm sorry, but the Empress doesn't take visitors today. He grins his evil grin as he says this. Vlad can feel the tension in the air, and he knows it only takes one gunshot for his men to gun down the slaves in sheer reflex. Does he really want to, though, suffer the thought that he or she gunned down defenseless slaves? Vlad keeps his gun lowered as he starts to squeeze the trigger, and as soon as the shot burns off, all hell breaks loose. He closes his eyes but still can hear the screams of pain and suffering. He opens his eyes, and to his surprise, he can see slaves still alive, lying down with their hands on their heads. Ivan, Kenneth, and Peter with me. The rest of you take care of these slaves, Vlad barks out as he starts to walk into the castle. It doesn't take long before Vlad slams the large door open to the throne room to be met by more gunfire. One bullet hits Vlad in his plate carrier, knocking the air out of him as he stumbles to the side. Give up! All your men are dead, Peter calls out. A low-pitched boom can be heard, and the sickening sound of a head hitting the floor. Ivan quickly peeks and shows 3 fingers and removes one, indicating one is dead. After that, he turns toward the door and points at the locations of the targets. Vlad shows a closed fist for attack and 3 fingers on the count of 3 and removes the fingers in a smooth 3 seconds. All of them rush in and kill Lord Hutch instantly, and Phoenix is badly hit, groaning in pain. Vlad walks up to her and kicks the AK away from her. He follows her, thinking of what she forced him to do, all those slaves he had to kill. Yes, he gave the signal, a signal he knew was going to make every last one of his men open fire. Vlad walked past Phoenix and stepped down on her hand, making her cry out in pain before he kneeled and drew his knife. Your reign of terror is over, he murmured before slamming his knife into her head, instantly making her stop struggling. The end.